slavery. I do remember, that's why I believe. I don't know why the rivers overflow their banks. I don't know why the snow falls and covers the ground. I don't know why the hurricane sweeps through the land every now and then. Standing in a rainstorm, I believe. I don't know why the angels woke me up this morning soon. I don't know why the blood still runs through my veins.
I feel very special, y'all, like having us join you for dinner.
I don't know how I rate to run another day. I am here still running, I believe. Hit 'em a little, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em a little, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em a little, hit 'em a little, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em, my lady, hit 'em a little, hit 'em, hit 'em, my God calls to me in the morning dew. Power of the universe knows my name. Gave me a song to sing and sent me on my way. I raise my voice for justice, I believe. Hit 'em a little, hit 'em, hit 'em, my down, hit 'em, hit 'em a little, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em, hit 'em a little, hit 'em a little, hit 'em, hit 'em.
Welcome, everybody. We'll get started soon. While you are waiting, you can go ahead and drop in the chat if you'd like your name, role that you're coming in if you'd like, and where you're based. As a reminder, this is a C4, a 501c4 call. So if you are here in an individual capacity, feel free to just say that because we're gonna be talking about some elections and who is and who ain't on our side. So just that reminder, this is a C4 call. If you want to take that into account when you share in the chat, you are, what your role is, where you're based. Thank you, Theo. And thanks, Hugh, for getting us started off, putting your name in. Exactly. Yeah, great. We got Jessica Lawrence in the house. What's up, Jessica? Our dear friend Meredith is here, who I hear is making dinner for some of our illustrious movement leaders so that they can be in this election. Thank you, Meredith. There are things in addition to money that are very helpful. Ooh, we got one of our folks from Nope, from DC here. Fantastic. Good to see you. Got our folks from Wellstone. Got a lot of people here from North Carolina. The folks from Wellstone try to be here like they're in North Carolina as frequently as possible. Great. Oh, cool. We got our folks from Full Circle Strategies who I emailed earlier, and I was like, I think I missed the memo. And then Thea was like, yes, these folks have been supporting us. I was like, oh no, sorry about that. So many things flying around. Really glad to have you on this evening. Oh, our folks from Pro Democracy. Fantastic, fantastic. Vivian's here with us. Vivian, who came to our convention. Good to see you. All right. We are going to go ahead and get started. Um, and let's see here. Chris and Anna, do y'all also have the ability to let people in the waiting room as they're coming up? Great. So I will stop being an anxious host and watching that and let y'all hold those pieces. There's so many folks who signed up for this call and who are showing up this evening. We're really excited to have you. This is our fortification call, and it's the first of a few. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This one is focused on our donor partners. And folks have already been doing this in the chat. If you haven't already, please drop your name in, your organization or role, keeping in mind that this is a 501c4 call. So if you are usually associated with a 501c3 organization, you work with us around that, you're probably here in an individual capacity. So feel free to note that in the chat. And you've listed all those things already. You've been on listening to my fantastic tunes. Then you can share one feeling word. You feel free to do more if you got more on your heart. But at least one feeling word 5 days out from E-Day. How are you doing? Yeah. So if you haven't introduced yourself already, name in the chat, role, given that this is a C4 space, where you're based, one feeling word. Jittery, anxious, electrified, full. Don't rub it in that you're getting fed, okay? Good. Leslie saying optimistic, grateful. Hannah says very anxious. Yes. Come on, Jess, ready. Indeed, indeed. All right, we'll let those keep coming in. And if you are able, and it makes sense to you, feel free to come on chat or at least take in, or not on chat, on video, at least take in the folks who are here on this call. Now through election day and beyond, it's going to be so important for us to be in connection, in coordination with one another. This is an opportunity for you to see some of the folks who are rallying around our state right now to help us move to these last few days. I want to say something about this call and who I am. My name is Sindolo Demina. I am co-director of the Carolina Federation with Jen, wherever she is on your screen. The other folks who are on the call from our team are Ana de Leon, who is here with us on our fundraising team, our senior fundraising manager. We have Chris Hebner, who is our donor coordinator, and Theo Lubke, who leads our fundraising team and also our partnership work. So that's the Federation team who is on, at least staff-wise. But there are so many people who are on this call who have been not just donors, but also participants in our work on phone banks, volunteering, working with our folks. So the team is even wider than just the staff. These calls are about getting fortified now and beyond the election. As you already know, you're talking about it in the chat, as everything is flying around, this race is very close from federal to state to local and legislative elections. We are all feeling it. And one of the things that was really clear to us was we were like, we got to get our members, we got to get our allies, we got to get our donors all together clear and fortified in this moment, because we need every single one of us on point, ready through election day and past election day. I used to be like, on election day, then we all like fall over. They're like, whoo. But it's not like that no more, y'all. Election day means fighting for the certifications. Election day means using that information to shape what we're doing next. Election day means being in the fight in our hearts and in our heads about what's going on and how we stay with each other. So these fortification calls are about that. I am going to share my little screen situation. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So there are 4 of these calls that we're going to be doing. This one tonight is the one for our donors and our funding partners. We're going to be doing another one the day after election with our members, with you, and with all of our allies. It's an open call for folks who want to get right. It's not an open call for trolls. Then on November 15th, on the evening that the county canvas and certification is planned, we will also be doing a call then, because we know there's going to be a ballot cure happening from election day through at least then. And then on the 26th, where the state is scheduled to do the state certification, we'll also be doing another call. I made those caveats because the actual dates of certification may change if there are challenges, if there are fights. We feel really confident that the party and the independent expenditure folks and the C3 infrastructure are all lining up in order to make sure the fights around the certification are strong. But we know that those fights can be real and that the dates may change based on what's going on. Rather than being like, who knows? Let's just wait in anxiety. We were like, let's put the dates on the calendar now and make a promise to each other that we're going to be in touch about what's going on, even if we need to pivot. That's one of the foundations for how we think we're going to stay fortified in this period. We're going to be saying more about how you can sign up for those calls after you get a little bit of a taste of what we're doing on them with this one. Here's where we're going, y'all. We're going to start out by telling you about some amazing work. Like, yes, we're all feeling it. What's at stake? What's going to happen? Is fascism coming? How are we going to prevent it? All of that is in our feelings, but we shouldn't let that close off a view of the amazing things that are happening that are going to be essential, whether we win and we have to keep pushing, or there are things that we lose and we need to use that strength to continue fighting for our folks and to protect the most vulnerable. So we want to share, how are we growing? How are we getting more powerful? What is that looking like? Not just us, but also our partners. Then we want to talk about what's the data that we're seeing right now, early on, and how do we use that for meaningful action rather than spiraling out? Whether that's spiraling out like it's all good or spiraling out, nothing will matter. Then, y'all, we gonna get vaccinated tonight. There are already contagious stories flying around, causing chaos and havoc. And this evening, we're going to get prepared for those stories that are coming and instead get a perspective of this year's election in the context of the fight for governing power, particularly here in North Carolina. We're going to try to move through that relatively quickly so that we can have a question and answer with y'all back and forth conversation. For at least about 20 minutes on the call. And then for those of y'all who just can't get enough of us, we are going to stay on a little bit longer after the formal call ends if there are further things to discuss. Let's see. Okay, I'm cheating. Sorry, Jen. That's the end. Pretend you didn't see that.
All good.
So I'm going to pass it over to you, Jen.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Sindolo. Hello, everyone. It's so good to see some of y'all that I know. I don't know many of you. I am relatively new as co-director here at the Federation. I mean, I've been around for a long time, but it took some time for me to change roles. And happy to see some of you for the first time. I have the tremendous pleasure of managing our political program. I get to supervise our political director, Gabe Gold-Hodgkin, and our field director, Ashley Evans, who at the beginning of this year set a pretty ambitious goal for our field program. She's good at setting highly ambitious goals of visiting the homes of 700,000 North Carolinians. Sindolo, you can advance that slide for me. I'll keep talking while Sindolo is doing that. So yeah, visiting the homes of 700,000 North Carolinians in 6 counties, having conversations with these voters about the issues that matter to them, and connecting those issues to the most important elections on our ballot this year. And to put that goal in perspective, just 2 years ago in 2022, we knocked on 170,000 doors in just 4 counties. And in 2020, 4 years ago, the last presidential election, we knocked fewer than 50,000 doors. So we set ourselves this audacious goal of running a program 4 times the size of our largest previous effort, and expanding into 2 additional counties, Cumberland County and Mecklenburg County. And that means we have a total of over 140 canvassers talking to folks in the state's largest metro areas, Mecklenburg, Cumberland County, Forsyth and Guilford counties, Durham County. We've added Wake County now, and we're also in New Hanover County where Wilmington is. And with just 5 days left before the election, we've actually surpassed that highly ambitious goal. We have knocked on over 750,000 doors, and we have had conversations with 95,000 voters. Our budding communications program, which is very new and currently run by one of our founding members who has been generously offering to contract with us through this election period, has reached over 500,000 voters. And we are doing a joint phone bank with our partners at Down Home and Samra, and they've surpassed door knocking goals as well. And our massive phone bank that we're doing together, which is volunteer run and led with people from across the country who are making calls, has called over 3 million people and talked to 25,000 voters. Alongside the other in-state homegrown partners that we're working with through the America Votes table, that Jessica Lawrence is helping coordinate, we have an ambitious goal together of knocking 4 million doors. And we are on track to meet that goal. Just over 2 years ago, we were nowhere near this kind of capacity, y'all. This is a big deal, and a huge moment. And I want to take just a moment to let that sit. Let that sit in the room. I see cheers from some people. I see hearts. I see messages coming into the chat. Yes, in a time where there's so much anxiety, this is a moment to celebrate. What we have accomplished together is amazing. And there are still 5 days to go. And these races, we know, are going to be razor close, razor thin margins we are talking about here. Our whole team, all the teams at all the organizations that we know of are digging deep. They're cheering each other on. We're reminding ourselves what is at stake this year, that we're in this together, and we're all committed to keeping up this pace all the way through Election Day. And we're so grateful for the support from so many of y'all in the form of time and money. We have felt you alongside us, and I want to invite you to join us and run together with us to the finish line. You can sign up right now for the phone banks that we still have going on. These are phone banks you can join from anywhere. You do not have to be in North Carolina. You can join the effort to continue talking to voters who, believe it or not, are still making up their minds about whether to vote or who to vote for. Or mostly actually we're calling people who are with us. They're just not voting yet. And we see our conversations where we connect with people and really get at what they care about, making a difference to move people to the polls. So I saw some people put in the chat that you're feeling anxious or doubtful. I have been there with you. And now is a moment to not let our anxiety about this election take us out of the fight. Now is not a moment to get into our heads. If you want to do something about it, you can sign up for a shift. You can sign up for 2 shifts. You can sign up for every shift that we have between now and Election Day. And if you're fluent in Spanish, you can sign up for the Thursday night phone bank, that's Siembra Lead. All of these phone banks have such a sense of camaraderie. You get quality training right before making calls, and people love the energetic team feel that we've created in these phone banks. So this energy is high. Please do join us. All right. I've made my ask for you to join our phone banks. We've talked about how high the energy is in this election. And you may have heard, whether you're in North Carolina or not, that we are already breaking some records in terms of voter turnout. So voter turnout is showing that North Carolinians care and know what's at stake this election. We think it's worth taking some time to dig into what we're seeing in terms of turnout so far. And before I do that, I also want to ground us in some bigger picture political context for our state. So I may not need to remind some of you, but it's worth saying that the North Carolina GOP definitely has been seeing the energy and momentum we've been building in the state for the last many years. And we've been organizing for some time now in North Carolina in a context in which the right wing has, for over a decade, used the power that it has gotten to undermine the will of the people. They have gerrymandered the heck out of our voting maps. They've put up significant barriers for voter registration and voting. They have underfunded and attempted multiple times to take over our county and state boards of elections. They've made it harder for voters to help, for us to help voters with absentee ballots. And they've made it easier for any voter to challenge or intimidate another voter. They've supported purges of voters from the rolls. And most recently, at the 11th hour, they forced our Board of Elections to reprint all the ballots because they removed RFK from our ballot in North Carolina. There are other things that they've done, but you get the gist of it. And so far, alongside of these systemic attacks on voting, they've been ginning up fear, disinformation, lies, stirring up hatred, and whipping their base into a frenzy. And early voting numbers show the GOP slightly ahead overall in North Carolina, and early voting numbers show that Black turnout is down compared to where it was this time in 2020. Some folks have seen these numbers and gotten sucked into a place of despair or anxiety or even inaction around these numbers. We are not doing that at the Federation. We're not letting what media or pundits or even some political strategists are saying about interpreting the numbers as Black voters underperforming or our organizations underperforming. We are not getting stuck in foregone conclusions and unhelpful narratives about what this stuff means. Early voting data tells us some things. It tells us helpful things. But we won't really know where we are until election day. And the way we're approaching the data that we have is through the lens of what is within our control, what things can still be shaped by our organizing efforts and our program. We believe that we can't, in this moment, change the broader political context in which we're operating, but we can, and we should in this moment, respond to what we're seeing with both strategy and determination. So here's what we're doing. Our field director, Ashley, as soon as she got the information about these numbers, reached out proactively to America Votes and expressed our readiness and our willingness to shift our focus of where we're knocking doors to add more capacity to reaching Black voters who haven't yet voted. She and the staff at AV went county by county to prioritize precincts where turnout was lagging, and we shifted our focus in Forsyth County, Cumberland County, Durham County, New Hanover County. We added precincts that we weren't knocking in before in Guilford County. We moved one of our best canvassers in Durham from Durham to Wake County, a county we weren't in at all before, to launch a team there where we've been knocking about 700 to 900 doors a day. And in Mecklenburg County, we pivoted to spend the rest of our time between now and when voting ends, focusing on the precincts that are most in need of closing turnout gaps. Just today, we added even more precincts that we weren't covering in Cumberland County. We have also pivoted our joint phone banks, the ones I just asked you to help us with, to calling through a giant list of every positive ID. So every person that any of our organizations has gotten to say, I will commit to voting for your candidates. We're going to try to get through that list. I think it's about 300,000 people at least 3 times, and we're dedicating all of our phone bank capacity to doing that. Y'all, we believe in using information, especially hard or troubling information, to inform and improve our actions, not to get sucked into despair. This is not the time to give up. Like I said, until those polls close and the final numbers are tallied, we won't know what happens. And until then, every action that we can take, we have to take. We have to take good news and bad news and use those things to move us in the right directions. If all of the organizations out there doing GOTV in North Carolina orient to this challenge in this way, we can still have our desired impact on the outcomes of this election. As Sindolo said earlier, even once we get to election day, it's not over. We're going to keep our team on post-election, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Sindolo, to tell people why and make an act.
All right. Y'all see what I just my co-director? Fire. Okay. So after election day, we know the fight does not end. Jen was talking about the ways that they have made it more difficult for North Carolina voters to have their voices heard. They've made it, they did the voter ID, they've done the voter challenges. And one of the ways that we can protect our people is actually by following up with people whose ballots just need a little bit of support to get fixed and counted. We talk about that as ballot cure. And the folks at America Votes and our other partners like y'all are supporting our organization to keep our canvassers on so they can reach out to each of those North Carolinians who made the effort to be in this fight. And that's not just the thing that paid canvassers can do. That is the thing that our members are signing up to do. That is the thing that you can do. You can do that both in person and by phone. So if the day after election day, when it's likely that we won't know the results of a number of close races, you were like, I need something to do so I don't just run around in circles or just lay in my bed looking at the ceiling. Join us for Ballot Cure. For a North Carolina voter to get a phone call or to get knocked on their door and to realize there are people out here who are fighting to make sure their voice is heard and to connect with them. Join us with that with Ballot Cure. We're going to be doing that all the way through the 14th, the last day that we can be doing Ballot Cure. The one caveat that I will mention is, like Jen said, we use information to make decisions. And so we're going to be tracking what is going on in North Carolina, how close are the different races. And so signing up for this means that we're going to reach out to you. You're going to be on call with us. We're going to be reaching out to you if and when that Ballot Cure work is ready to go. So if you are interested in being a part of that, Theo has dropped the link in the chat for you to sign up for Ballot Cure, whether that's in person, you're in one of the counties that we're in, or again, you want to do that by phone, you're out of state or you're in another part of the state that maybe one of our partners is in. So that is a way that you can be part of the fight to protect democracy and the right to vote after Election Day. Passing it back to you, Jen.
Thank you, Sindolo.
Oh, I'm seeing a question here from Mary Mountcastle that I think might be helpful here. We're going to do most of the questions at the end, but I think this is a really useful one. She asked, she said, I signed up for post-election follow-up through the Democratic Party. What's the difference between working with y'all and working with the party? I think if you are signed up for a Ballot Cure with the party, that's great. Stick with that. I mean, if you got more time, we'll take it. But both organizations, they don't coordinate. I'm sure you know this, Mary, but they don't coordinate when we're on the independent expenditure side with the party on the coordinated side. And so we're not going to be in conversation about things, but both sets of groups are doing this work around making sure every North Carolinian who's fighting with us is able to have their vote counted.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Earlier I mentioned that already people are interpreting and doing sense making of the data and moving in this direction of hopelessness or despair. And we know that's not going to stop. That will continue after the election, right? Depending on the outcome of this election, you're going to keep hearing stories. You're going to hear stories like, we spent all this money on knocking doors, field doesn't work. You're going to hear things like North Carolina, we call it a swing state. People say it's purple, but it actually just can't be flipped. And you're going to hear old stories about apathetic voters, lazy young people, and cynicism that is we cannot overcome in this country. Sindolo and I were talking about this earlier, and we haven't been around very long. The Federation officially launched in 2019, but we know that already our work shows that this stuff isn't true. Our early experiences, our early experiments in both year-round deep organizing and electoral organizing are demonstrating that the kinds of investments that you and others are making in our organization, in our whole North Carolina movement ecosystem, are necessary to grow some very promising power building work. I talked before about the political context that we're in North Carolina. We're also inside a national crisis, an international crisis of democracy and the move towards authoritarianism. And we're inside of a crisis in our country of civic engagement. And despite that, Despite that, inside of that, we are reaching people. And the arc of seeing the kinds of transformative results that we're working for, not incremental reform, transformative results, the kind of power building we're doing, takes longer than a few election cycles. And so many of you know that, and that's why you're investing in our organizations and organizations like Down Home and Siembra. But we know we're going to hear these narratives. And as Sindolo and I were talking about this earlier, you were reminding me, Sindolo, of some of the things that we've seen in the time that we've been around. So I want to kick it back to you to share some of that with folks tonight.
Yes. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the change that we saw from 2016 to 2020. We won't know the changes from 2020 to 24 until all the numbers come out. But I want to give y'all a little snapshot of what it looked like in terms of the counties we were in from 2016 to 2020 in terms of turnout. And all right. Oh, this is blurry now, but I hope y'all can see these numbers. So in Durham, we saw the increase from 121 to 142, and this 21,000 number growth, right? In each county, we're actually seeing growth in terms of the number of people who are participating. Now, this is happening also on the other side, right? This is a really important thing to grasp, that like some of the stories about what's happening in North Carolina make it sound like everything's just standing still. No, actually on both sides, we're seeing these increases. And one of the reasons it's important to continue to have the investment in field programs, in permanent organizing in North Carolina, is right now we are fighting to keep up. And when we're talking about going from 170,000 to 700,000 doors, we're trying to actually not just catch up, but surpass them. And if we keep growing like this, not just in the Carolina Federation, but also in our partner organizations and in AV across the board, we think we're going to close that gap and then surpass it. Then I want to say something about the more detailed organizing work. And there's a lot of numbers on this, but let me give a framework and then talk you through a little bit about what's on here. These numbers are from our engagement in a Greensboro City Council election. And this was a really useful laboratory for us because there wasn't a lot of other factors going on in the election. It wasn't like the spending from a national party or anything like that is really shaping what's going on with the outcome. In the city council election, we were talking about local conditions. And what we saw was in the precincts and with the people that we did organizing with, not just mobilization during the election, but issue-based campaigns, listening to people about what was happening in their neighborhoods, and then running fights that actually address those things and then use those fights to get commitments from the elected officials who are running, we saw pretty incredible impact in terms of who actually participated in elections. So this was in a primary for the city council. And what you'll see in the columns is how many of the previous three primaries somebody had voted in. So the first column is none of the last three. And the final column, 3 of the last 3. So that's what you're seeing there. And then you'll see that how many times did we talk to somebody? So 1 or more conversations, 2 or more conversations, 3 or more, 4 or more. And when you put those together, you get to see like what's the impact of us having these conversations, building these relationships with people over time, and how does that compare to the baseline, which is this first row here. So overall, right, the baseline was this 15% of people in terms of their turnout. Now, if you look at the impact of us having one conversation in the context of our ongoing organizing, Then it turns to 43, and you see that going all the way up to 75 with 4+ conversations. I am not great at math, and so I'm not going to attempt to walk y'all through the percentages in the second part of this, but I wanted to share just these earlier pieces around the impact of these conversations in the context of issue-based ongoing engagement. And one of the things that we know is that face-to-face conversations, actually participating and building relationships, is the most effective thing in terms of moving people into action. And one of the things that happens on the other side of elections is folks first want to chop that. No one has conversations about, like, what about all that money that went into ads? What about all that money that went into the digital pieces? We're not saying that doesn't matter, but we are saying that the field work that happens is vital to us continuing to grow in North Carolina. And that's not just about what happens during the election. I want to say something about our field program. Our field program is a leadership development program. The people who are knocking on doors are the very people who the GOP has been fighting to disenfranchise and keep cynical and disillusioned. Overwhelmingly, our canvassers are young Black people. And we just had a conversation earlier this week with Ashley about how when they come in our doors, often they're like, look, I need a good paying job. Y'all pay good living wages. And I'm not sure about all this election stuff. What difference will it make? We do leadership development, dig into people's states about what's going on, and then they become ambassadors to their peers about what's going on. That becomes the foundation for those folks to become permanent organizers over time. And we've had people move from canvassers to lead canvassers. Our staff member, Brandon, canvassed with us in 2022. He became a lead canvasser in Durham this year, did so well that we asked him actually to run an office, and he moved to Cumberland County and is living there now. He had to negotiate with his partner now, but moved to Cumberland County in order to do this work. Ashley Evans, who's running this program now statewide, the largest programs in the state, started with us in 2022 running the Greensboro office, and told me after she ran that office, I'm going to be your next field director. These are folks who have been impacted by the issues that we're talking about, who, when we invest in them, take on more leadership to bring more people in. So the field program is one way that we are developing people and reaching more people in North Carolina. But it is also not the only way that we are doing it. And between elections, besides elections, alongside elections, all my friends are telling me at 7:40, y'all, we got to move to Q&A because they know I get excited. I'm like whipping myself up. Between elections, besides the elections, beyond the elections, the ongoing organizing that we're doing is actually trying to crack the code around the civic engagement crisis that's happening in this country. And really, the truth is, y'all, whether we win these elections or we lose them, it is going to be a narrow margin, and that is not good enough. We are very clear that this is part of a relay race. 2024 is going to hand the baton to 2026. And we're doing work in 25 to set that up. At the beginning of 2025, we're going to do what we always do, issue-based campaigns. We won $30 million of local funds last year alongside Down Home and Siembra that gave people a feeling of why in the world does civic engagement matter? It matters because you get to keep your teachers in the classrooms. It matters because it means you get to get funding for affordable housing and to prevent people from getting evicted. And then we use that to get involved in local races. And so next year, we're going to be running city council races in Greensboro, in Durham. Actually, this year already, we weren't supposed to be doing another issue-based campaign, but the folks in New Hanover went rogue. We didn't even know. They told us earlier this week, went rogue and got these commitments from the folks in New Hanover to have a rubric for who gets appointed to the foundation there that got set up when the hospital was sold. right? They saw that. They used the electoral organizing that was happening right now and said, we got to jump on this now. That's what it looks like when people decide that democracy really means something to them. And then me and Jen find out that it happened later because we are a member-led organization. They decided to leave. So we're going to be doing that next year. We're going to be running city council election. That's going to set us up for 2026, where we're going to go back into the fight with legislative elections. And that will be a relay and handing things off for 27, going into 28. And in 28, we got to win back the North Carolina Supreme Court. The results of this year's election is not does organizing work or not. It's what did we do right this year that has to scale? And what did we get wrong that needs to shift so that we can win back the North Carolina Supreme Court in 2028? We are committed to that. When we get that new majority, we got to get new maps. We got to get new maps. And that means the organizing capacity that we're building has to pivot into that kind of fight so that in 2030, we can get a new majority and really go for governing power. We believe that's possible. And we believe that in this moment, no matter what happens on election day, we have to use that to fortify and clarify for people what's going on. And that includes recruiting people to the organizing, recruiting people to be members, recruiting people to run with a plan for running towards 2030. Okay, I went 4 minutes past my 7:40. This is not my worst behavior. So I wanted y'all to have a sense of what we are up to in terms of thinking about this work in the long term and putting it in context of what's going on. And I want to ask y'all to take action on that longer piece. And there's a few things that you can do around that. One, if you are with an institution, we would like you to reach out to Anna, send an email to Anna if you are interested in preparing to take this conversation back to your institution around what it means to invest in North Carolina for the field for the long term. We know that probably your institution is making some pretty big strategic choices on the other side of this election. You're going to have to wrestle with some real questions. We want to be in that conversation with you. And if this conversation has given you a sense that, okay, these folks know something about what they're doing. Okay, there's a long-term plan and a strategy here. If that interests you, send an email right now to Anna De Leon. It don't have to be a long email. You don't have to write all the things, but open up your email and put Anna's email in there. It's anna@carolinafederation.org. If somebody drop that in the chat. Oh, I see Theo put the link in there. Take a moment, open up the email draft if this interests you. And just say, hey, Anna, I'd like to set up a time. This is why. So this is why matters. We're organizers. We want to know what has you on fire. So take a moment to do that. If you get a little fire in you, get a little inspiration. Theo, if you could also drop the link for all the asks that we've made this evening. There will be links in there for the phone bank. There'll be links in there for the ballot cure. There'll be links in there to email Anna. There'll be links in there to donate if you missed that earlier. Am I missing anything from our call to action? Great. All right. So thank you very much for being in with us as we were whipping ourselves and hopefully whipping you up. Want to stop that part here and open it up to y'all with questions that may come up any of this. Or if you're like, I don't have a question, but I got a feeling I just need to say. That is also welcome here. So feel free to come off mute. Any questions, any thoughts?
I'll go. I'll just say deep, deep gratitude. for the call and for the work and for the smart strategy and deep quality organizing of this call and the work that your team does every day in the field. So just deep gratitude. And you all are, everybody out in the field all across the country that I've gotten to know is what keeps me going every day. And I'm signing up for shifts in upstate New York. So here's to all of us. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jess.
Sindolo, it's Meredith. Do you all have the funds to pay the canvassers to do all the post-election work?
Here's what I'm going to say about that, Meredith. We will always take more money. We have raised the money in order to keep our canvassers in the field. We have raised that money. I want to be honest to y'all about that. And what we are trying to do, there's a few pieces. One, we are still raising the money to keep all of the team that we need for 2025 and setting up for 2026. Well, that is still fundraising that we are doing. We are not currently fundraising for the post-election work immediately. Is that accurate, Theo?
Awesome.
But I will take one of Theo's plates. Oh, Margaret Smith? Yes. See, you have a hand.
Yeah, I would like to know what issues you say, you talk to people about issues. What issues are really important to the people there that you're speaking to these days?
Mm-hmm. Jen, you want to take that one?
Yeah. Well, so reproductive freedom is one that has come up a lot. A lot of folks are talking about wanting access to jobs that make enough for them to care for themselves and their families so they don't have to do extra legal work. We've got folks who are just trying to get by and are doing that with alternative economies they'd rather not be. And then childcare is another really big thing that comes up over and over again on the doors. There's no good options for parents, even with resources, who are working outside of public school hours for care for their children, and that comes up over and over again. And then beyond those things, healthcare continues to be a concern for people that some people have lost access to Medicaid or been bumped off the rolls even after Medicaid expansion. And I don't know if you've seen this process or these commercials, but kind of a convoluted process to get back on. So those are the things that this year, as our canvassers have been out, they've been hearing over and over again.
I see Hannah put a question in the chat. And before answering that, I just want to say, Hannah, thanks for the Virginia comparison earlier in the chat. I was looking at some of the numbers nationally, and now people are like, Virginia's just in the blue column. Like, that's just magic, just always been like that. And it wasn't people doing tremendous committed work over a long period of time. John List at New Virginia Majority is one of our mentors and elders who advises us. And they've been doing that work for decades to get Virginia to where it is. And we really believe that that is possible and are explicitly inspired and guided by the work that happened in Virginia and believe that that's necessary and possible in North Carolina. So wanted to lift up Virginia. And then your question was for low turnout voters, do we know if it's a choice to not turn out or lack of a ride to a close polling location? If so, what are your thoughts on overcoming that? So we use information, good and challenging, in order to make good decisions that help make meaningful action. So one of the things that we know is that putting together voting plans is key to actually knowing whether or not somebody is going to vote when they say that they're going to vote. And so all of our positive ID conversations, all of our conversations where people say, we're with you, let's fight, we walk through, so when you gonna do it? How you gonna do it? What might get in the way, right? So there are conversations to troubleshoot any specific challenge that gets in the way for a voter and find a solution to that, whether it's something that our organization, another organization, or somebody in that person's network can help them put together. But that planned conversation is the key to that. Having said that, one of the things that really struck me from our field leadership team is the biggest obstacle isn't a specific material barrier. Again and again, the thing that comes up is folks being like, will this make a difference in my life? And it's not enough to beam messages at people through screens telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing. Folks want to have a connection, a conversation with somebody who they feel like hears and understands what they're facing in their lives, and then make some good case that makes sense. And so Ashley was telling us a fantastic story the other day about one of our canvassers who goes out and has these conversations all the time, being like, I don't know, is there any difference between when Trump was in office and when Biden was in office? And part of what was really striking to me about Ashley's story is she was like, well, maybe you don't see a specific thing for you, but what about the women in your life? What about the young women in your life? Do you want them to be able to make a decision about when they have a family? And they were like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And, you know, Ashley was telling this story. She was just on fire. It meant so much to me to hear her say this about, like, we're not out here just voting for ourselves as individuals. We go in there individually, but we go in there for all of our people. That conversation can happen because Ashley and her team have built a relationship of trust with that person. That person felt like they could raise a question and be like, I don't know about this whole system. And then hear a response. And so we're developing people who become ambassadors. And we don't have a relational voting program officially with our canvassers, but turns out they started doing it. And Ben, who works in Durham, was giving us a story the other day that people come in and have this little brag and little competition about, like, well, I got my Uber driver to sign up to vote, and he's going to do it on this day. And I got this many people in my family. And when that starts being a thing that people feel proud of and excited about, that's when we see the change. And I'll be honest with y'all, we see that best with the people we've been able to spend time with and where they've got some material supports that they're not struggling every day. We've seen that happen with our canvassers. The question then becomes, how do we learn from that and scale it into broader community? We have not cracked that code. We won't crack that code if people decide that North Carolina isn't worth it next time, because this round was hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's related to James's question about, like, how do we talk to people about inflation or the high cost of living. Really, with any issue on the doors, the primary goal that we have with our canvassers is to make sure they are clear and rooted in their own stake, and that they understand how to listen for and care for another person's stake. And so when someone brings up something like high cost of inflation, we validate feelings of frustration and challenge around that, because they're real. And we engage that person in a conversation. What sense are you making of the high cost of inflation? Do you think that everybody in your community is dealing with the same issues? If not, why not? Who do you think has the power to make these changes? And there's a back and forth conversation about what is happening here. And most people that we talk to know that we're facing things like high cost of housing, jobs that don't pay enough, grocery costs that are too high, because there's a group of people in our country, wealthy people, who have way too much access and way too much power, and our wages aren't keeping up. So this back and forth, being rooted and clear about our own stakes, and a genuine conversation on doors is what matters to people and what makes a difference.
I want to invite folks. If you are in here, you're like, yeah, I get it, but I've got a contrary idea, or I've got a difference here, or I've got a challenging thing that I want to put on the table. We also want to invite that in. I know I get very excited, and so it can feel like, oh, okay, this is just all rah rah. I'm having a different experience. We want to invite that in too. Marjona, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, Marjana. That's
Marjana.
I actually don't have a difficult or alternative question for you all. I have it for my fellow funders on the call. As you know, as Jen and Sandola were presenting, it was just striking to me that even now, in this moment of 2024, groups have to explain power building to us, and they have to explain to us how funding 365 days a year round, and activating people in an effective way to save our democracy. Come on, y'all. What do we need to do, like in our own institutions and in our sector, to listen to groups when they tell us what's working and what they need? And if they need general operating support so they can put more canvassers on the ground, let's figure out a way to make that happen. If there's a grant that we can put together that's for 3 years, 4 years, however long term it needs to be, so that they can fund this kind of work, let's figure it out. I like really at this time, I don't understand why these things still need to be explained to us. Thanks.
I appreciate that. I feel like you gave us another call to action here. If there are spaces that y'all are in that we might not have access to, where you can make a similar intervention, we ask that you do that in those spaces that we know that this very contagious stories are going to be spreading around, as people are scared, as people are confused, and being able to step into those spaces and say, we know what actually works, let's stay the course, makes a big difference. So if there's a space that you know you could be in before Election Day, after Election Day, take a moment to write that down and what you would like to do, what you could say. Whose ear do you have? Great. Oh, I just saw Kendall on here from Mission Telecom. Hey, Kendall. All right. Any other questions here before we formally wrap up? All right. Theo dropped in the chat one last time the link for all of our calls to action. We hope to see you with us at a phone bank, at a ballot cure call or canvas launch, at one of our upcoming fortification calls with our members. Any of these ways that we can continue to take action right now. We hope that you have sent that email to Anna to say, yes, I'm ready to have this conversation. I want to talk about what it will mean in my institution to think about the investment in organizing long term, North Carolina, what it will take. Any and all of those actions we look forward to taking with you. Have a great evening if you are jumping off. If you are just a nerd and you can't get enough, we will linger a little bit longer for any additional questions or pieces that are on your heart. Night, Meredith.